Today we're making our Week 17 picks against the spread. Just finished our Week 16 reactions, so all of our thoughts and analysis should be fresh in our heads in regards to these picks and such. To update everyone on the standings, at least money-wise, if you remember last week, I put big money on the Niners. That cost me big time, as I put $950 on them. John put $100 on Baltimore. Probably our biggest swing. And honestly, maybe money-wise, maybe the nail in the coffin, but we'll see, because we both went negative last week overall. You were minus 760, and I was minus 960. Like I said, literally, the Niner game was the big swing for me. Record-wise, though, making a comeback, John, as last week you went 6-10. I went 8-8 against the spread. So now you are at 111 and 129 for the season, and I'm at 109 and 131. So only 2 games behind.
My picks have been rough the last month or so, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, also I've had some good weeks too. Right? Like when you get week 15, you went solid. You went 500, 8-8. I went 10-6. So yeah, it's a little bit of that too. Exactly. Where it's like, oh, I just happen to have a better week too.
It feels like every week you're kind of like 2 or 3 games above me, you know. So slowly clawing back.
Yeah, I wish I could do that for the money, but I did was for a minute, but then I blew it. Anyhow, maybe I can make a crazy comeback.
Well, you didn't blow it. The Niners blew it.
Well, I blew it. It was a close game too, and I put that much money on the Niners. It was overinflated. Nonetheless, while I learned my lesson this week, who knows? We'll see. As I'm not gonna lie, I do have what I'll say is the biggest bet I put, or either of us have put on the team this week. So we'll get into that. But anyhow, let's dive into the games, starting with the Thursday night game first, as always. And I believe this is our last Thursday night game. I'm assuming so. Usually week 18 doesn't. So thankfully, we're going to be done with Thursday nights, as they have not usually been great. I think we can all agree. But this one probably will be the same, as it is the Cleveland Browns. They are favored by 7.5 points, hosting the New York Jets. Looking like, who knows? Once again, we're doing this on Wednesday, so maybe Trevor Siemian at quarterback for the Jets may not really matter for us. Although I did see Amari Cooper popped up on the injury report with the heel, so maybe that could alter picks. Nonetheless, John, who do you have here, and for how much?
I'm going to go with Cleveland. I mean, we talked about how good their defense has been. I think it's going to be a struggle for the Jets to move the ball. At the same time, Cleveland's ability to give the ball away does worry me a little bit, that maybe it could be a touchdown game. The 7.5 is the whole reason that I'm only going to be putting 10 on this, but I do think that Cleveland should win this game. They're at home, which is where they've been really good on the year. I mean, the whole reason I took Houston last week was because Cleveland has not been that great on the road, but at home they've been fantastic. So I think the Browns continue to roll. I just don't know by how much, and so for that reason, I'm only going to put 10.
Yeah, I'm also putting 10 on the Browns. Just don't know what we're going to get, if they will cover the spread. I think they ultimately win this one. We know the Jets' offense is, I don't want to say inept, but pretty poor. Like, once again, we've seen good defenses. They take away Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, they'll be able to do so. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Cleveland defense once again kind of wins this for him. Maybe Flacco makes a play or two with his arm, like he's kind of been doing recently. But yeah, nonetheless, both of us going with the Browns, only putting the minimum 10, as it is Thursday night, and it's Joe Flacco. No offense to Joe, he's been great, but he has been turning the ball over a lot recently, so that could keep this spread close or possibly lead to a Jets upset, but who knows. So we're at least in agreement there for Thursday night, so we'll move on from that. Going on to the Saturday game, I'm double checking because I think it's the lone Saturday game of the week, Saturday nighter. It is between your Dallas Cowboys, who are at home. They are favored by 6.5 points, hosting the Detroit Lions. Huge game implications-wise for seeding, especially that 1 seed.
Yeah.
So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm going big on my Cowboys. Over the Mike McCarthy era, they have been really good following a loss. So I think that plays in their hand. This year, they're undefeated at home, so that plays into their hand. I think stylistically, Detroit, I think, can have some success running the ball, but I think Dallas and Dak can have a lot of success passing the ball against this Detroit secondary, who are like a bottom 5 unit in the league. And I'm assuming Tyron Smith should be back this week, meaning that I think the offensive line issues will be a little bit shored up. Just a lot of this to me indicates that I think Dallas is going to have one of those games like they had when they played Philadelphia at home, where I think Detroit can have some success, but I do think that Dallas will kind of run away with it just because of how good they've been at home. So I also think Detroit are a little bit of frauds, just because, you know, some of the results they've had. Like I said, Nick Mullins threw 4 picks last week and they still only won by 6. So we'll see. I could be proven wrong, but I just really don't think that Detroit leaning on the run game and Jared Goff is going to be enough to truly separate from the Cowboys, considering that huge mismatch that I see on the defensive secondary for the Lions. So, yeah, I think this could be. I don't think Dak can probably do anything to get back into the MVP race over Lamar unless the Ravens maybe choke and you know, lose out, and then like Dallas somehow is able to secure the division and like he crushes both the Lions and Washington, then maybe. But regardless, I think that he's going to have a really big day. I could see this being like a 3-4 touchdown day, 300-yard passing kind of a situation against this Lions defense. So, yeah, I'm putting 500 on my Cowboys.
All right. Well, I do believe your Cowboys will win this one, but I'm throwing a needle here. I think Detroit keeps it close. This is one of those where I'm kind of glad I got the spread. I'm putting 50, though, just because I'm not entirely confident in the Lions. You do bring up great points and great concerns. I'm very worried about Detroit's secondary, like we've mentioned, because they can't play man-to-man at this point. And against any good quarterback like Dak and experienced offensive play caller like Mike McCarthy, they're going to shred those zones, especially since Detroit's front four outside of Aiden Hutchinson, not really impressive. No offense to them, but just not really impressive. So they don't really scare me. So that is scary. But I think on the flip side, Detroit will have success moving the ball on offense against Dallas, especially on the run game. I won't be shocked to kind of slow this game down to keep it close. So, yeah, I'm throwing the needle here. I'm only putting 50 because Dallas is amazing at home. I mean, y'all are 7-0. It is a bit of a buff for y'all, you know, being on that turf, being able to fly around and such on both sides of the ball. So,
which is why having the 1 seed would have been fantastic, but we just had to not do enough.
Yeah, hey,
still a chance,
still hope,
but
yes, yeah. But nonetheless,
unlikely.
Yeah, so I'm throwing the needle there, putting 50. But anyway, John going with his Cowboys to cover the 6.5 points, putting 500 on them, while I'm putting 50 on the Detroit Lions to cover that 6.5 point spread, or possibly upset the Cowboys technically. So we'll see, you know, if Dallas will handle their business to, you know, keep their hopes of getting home field alive, or if Detroit too will take that step and you know, try to put themselves in that spot. But
I do want to say too, I meant to actually say this in our last episode about the reactions. Just keep an eye out on if Micah Parsons can draw a holding penalty. He has not drawn a holding penalty since week 6 against the Chargers. I'm not saying that like this is costing Dallas games, but I do just find it kind of crazy that if there was any of the like Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, that they haven't drawn a holding penalty in 10 games. Like, come on, like refs, yeah, I don't know, maybe pay attention more, because he's definitely getting held. Like, he literally has started posting pictures after every game of clear holding calls on his Instagram story. So I don't know. We'll see. Just keep an eye out. Will Micah Parsons draw a holding penalty? I'm sure there's a betting line out there somewhere, because it is kind of hilarious at this point.
And you know what's kind of sad too is I wonder if there's, first off, I wonder if there's a bet for this, is if he's going to get fined. You know what I mean? Because the league's so petty.
He probably will be.
He'll probably get.
But I mean, Jeff Saturday, and I'm only bringing this up because I think he's an unbiased party on this. I mean, Hall of Fame offensive lineman, never played for the Cowboys or even in the NFC, so he has no allegiance to Dallas whatsoever. But he literally said on air that he feels that opposing offensive coordinators and coaches can literally tell their offensive line to hold Micah Parsons because it's not being called, and they will get away with it. Like that those are his words, not mine. So that just goes to show what is happening right now against Micah.
Also, to clarify, he did spend that one season in Green Bay, but if anything, that reinforces your point because
yeah, because the Packers, the Packers and Cowboys, at least during the time that he was there, like that was, I don't know if I'd call it a rivalry because it's like the Joel Embiid quote of "You guys always kick our ass," but yeah,
yeah, and that was like 2010, so that was before too. Anyway, before Rodgers won his championship. I don't know, regardless, he was there for one. It was one measly year. Nonetheless.
Oh yeah, well, it was way back. I forgot how long ago Jeff Saturday retired.
I forgot too. I feel like it was only like 10 years ago. And it's like, wait a minute, 10 years ago was only like 2013. Time flies.
Yeah.
Or now to be 2014 because we're about to hit the new year. Yeah, we're getting old. Anyway, let's move on over to the Sunday games before we do get old here. And this one though, this first game, right off the bat, very good one as it is the. We mentioned Dallas, Detroit being a battle for seeding. This one definitely is, as it is the 1 seed in the AFC. Baltimore Ravens at home, fresh off that big win against the Niners. They are favored by 3.5 points, hosting the Miami Dolphins, who are right on their heels, chasing them, need this win to close that gap. Who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm going with Baltimore. This is a game where they can secure the number 1 seed if they win. They're at home. Massive game against the Niners that I think is a big confidence booster. And they did it against the Shanahan scheme. And I think that although you brought up a good point that could be good for Miami and what they want to do, and maybe they can like find some holes like we talked about. I don't necessarily think that it was some schematic advantage that Baltimore really had. They made a lot of plays, and I think they're going to continue to make plays. Miami has had some offensive line issues, which has made it a little bit difficult for Tua. He's been getting the ball out super fast, but even against the Cowboys, there's a couple throws there that like when Tua misses a throw, he misses pretty bad, and I think that Baltimore's just a defense that's going to punish you for that. So I do think that they can limit Tyreek in that regard. The Baltimore secondary has been fantastic. You talked about Kyle Hamilton when we did our reactions. So they've been really good. And then on the other side, although Miami's defensive line has been getting a lot of pressures, and I think maybe they lead the league in pressures. I heard some stat when they're playing the Cowboys. Maybe it's like since a certain week or something, but they've been really good recently is the point I'm making. And they were really good against Dallas, exposing that left tackle issue. As we talked about, Lamar is a different beast. It's hard to chase Lamar for an entire half. He wears you down. And so, yeah, I think that Baltimore continues to roll. I think they lock up the 1 seed here. I think they win. So I'm putting 200 on the Baltimore Ravens.
I am in agreement. I am putting, not as much though. I'm putting 100 on the Baltimore Ravens. We've seen Miami when there's like against Philly and some of these other teams that have equal talent, especially skill position wise, but then you get down. So then it comes down to the trenches, especially their offensive line is a weak point against at least a solid defensive front seven. They have issues. And like you mentioned, their timing offense gets harder for them. And especially Baltimore, we saw last week, it seems like they had a good feel for where Brock Purdy liked to go, or at least Kyle Shanahan and them, where they like to attack. Dropping guys in those zones, making Purdy hold the ball a little bit longer, and then their pass rush gets there, creates havoc. I think, although I did say it could help Miami, I just feel like in one quick week, I think it just favors Baltimore. All the disguises they do on defense as well. It's tough to gauge what they're going to do as an offensive play caller because they don't really have any tendencies that you can expose on them. And they have pretty good size, and Miami's run game has been great the past few weeks, like we saw earlier in the season, especially against Baltimore. I don't think they're going to be able to get the run game going. So you're one-dimensional against a great defense. It's a bad recipe. And then, on the flip side, no Jalen Waddle. Oh, no, no Jalen Waddle will be tough, too, for the Dolphins on their offense. But on the flip side, for Baltimore, their passing game has been going recently. Like we saw Zay Flowers have a great game. And I'm sure, Odell and stuff was due. But then Isaiah Likely's been a very good safety valve. Yes, he's not Mark Andrews, but he's been a pretty good fill-in, despite losing Andrews for them. And then the run game has been respectable where like I mentioned, it's not amazing, but you still have to respect it, especially with Lamar involved in the run game. Then you definitely have to respect it. So, I think Baltimore prevails here, especially at home. And I think they'll be extra motivated knowing that I'm sure John's and Lamar are going to get in all their guys' heads like, hey, like we win this game, we got home field, and I'm trying to look like I think if they win too, like they can chill. I'm not sure if they'll rest week 18, but hey, we may get an early vacation, guys. You may get things like that. So yeah, I think that'll be an extra motivating factor for the Ravens, and then on top of that, hey, like let's win this so that people got to come here to Baltimore, ugly Baltimore, and play in the AFC. The AFC runs through that. That's going to be tough for all the teams, really, or any team. So, yeah, I'm with you. Going Baltimore to win and cover, along with John. John putting 200 on the Ravens to cover the 3.5 points, while I am putting the standard 100 on them.
Also, just of note, the Dolphins this year are sort of similar to Dallas: 7-1 at home, 4-3 on the road. They score 34 points per game at home, only 27 on the road, so a full touchdown worse on the road. And their defense too, they only allow 17 at home. They allow 25 on the road. So, I mean, Miami, which once again, I do. At least in the Dallas case, it's partially like a lot of their best opponents are on the road. So that could play a factor there as well. But Baltimore is one of those opponents that's really good. So Miami, not as good on the road. Baltimore, they're really good at home. So
yeah, so they defend their home turf. So we'll see if that trend will continue for both teams. Let's move on over, staying in the AFC, to an AFC South matchup, where it is the Houston Texans at home, favored by 3.5 points, hosting the Tennessee Titans. This one's a little tough to gauge on a Wednesday because CJ Stroud could be back. Apparently, he may be practicing as of today, so he could be factored in. And then for the Tennessee Titans, I'm trying to see if it's going to be Tannehill again, or if there's any chance we'll see Will Levis. But nonetheless, John, while I'm looking that up, what are your thoughts here and your pick?
I'm going to be going with the Houston Texans. I'm only going to put 10. I don't feel confident either way just because of the quarterback stuff for both teams. Tennessee, although they've been eliminated, I mean, they showed last week in Seattle, they're still going to be competitive. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a competitive game too. Derrick Henry got it going last week. So we'll see. But I do think that Houston is just overall the better team. I think they have more on the line. They want to win. They want to see if they can make the playoffs. But I just don't really feel confident either way, which is why I'm only putting 10 on the Texans.
Yeah, I'm also putting 10 on the Texans just because who knows what we're going to get. Tennessee, scrappy team, especially divisional game, so that could factor in here. And yeah, like I said, who knows? So apparently, I'm reading the practice or injury reports. Tennessee is also a question mark at quarterback, at least because Mike Vrabel said as of today, once again recording, on a Wednesday, that Will Levis may practice, but it's the afternoon, so we don't know if he did. Regardless, yeah, I think the fact that Houston has more to play for. We mentioned they're still right on the cusp of the playoffs, still need Indianapolis to lose or something of the sort. But obviously they want to control their own destiny too a bit. So yeah, I think whether it's Case Keenum, Davis Mills, or C.J. Stroud, I think they still find a way to win this one. But yeah, we're both nervous about it, understandably so, as I imagine anyone would be betting on the Texans right now. So we're both putting 10, the minimum, on the Texans to cover against Tennessee, the 3.5 points. So let's go on over to another divisional matchup, this time in the NFC South. And this is a huge one, as it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, red hot Tampa Bay Bucks, at home, favored by 2.5 points, hosting the New Orleans Saints. And it looks like if Tampa wins this one, I believe they do lock up their division at least. So this is, like I said, big one for Tampa Bay, and for the Saints, obviously playing for their playoff lives at this point. So who do you have here, and for how much?
I'm gonna go with the Saints, and I don't know. It feels like Tampa. I just have this weird feeling in my stomach that like Tampa has kind of been riding high, but maybe they have a game where they just have a couple mistakes. The Saints could be a little bit desperate. I don't know who wins, so this could be a threading the needle situation, but there's also, the Tampa New Orleans kind of rivalry that's been a little bit happening over the last couple of years. Definitely not as on fire this year, I guess, because, Tom Brady's gone and neither team is really at their peak anymore. But yeah, I'm taking the Saints, but I'm only putting 10 because I do think that Tampa is the better team as of right now. I just think that that desperation for New Orleans might maybe kick in and things could get ugly.
Yeah, I'm going with Tampa Bay, and I'm pretty confident I'm putting 100 on them to win and cover. I've liked I have to go with what I've seen so far, and Tampa's been the more aggressive team, consistently and more successfully than New Orleans. And I mean, you do mention, hey, maybe desperation could finally play a factor, but it's like, I don't know. For me, I'm like, at this point, like, why now? Why wasn't it like when a couple weeks ago when you were more in the driver's seat, for New Orleans? It feels
Sure.
like, and then it's going to be tough. You're going to Tampa. Once again, they just won their last week, and no Marshawn Lattimore to be the to take away
Yeah.
Mike Evans, and that's always big. So yeah, it's tough. I for the Saints, I just don't have much confidence in them. So that's why I'm going with the Buccaneers to handle their business and win. And like I said, I think they see the finish line right there in sight in regards to getting the division title and punching their ticket in the playoffs. So I think that they'll take advantage of that and such. So yeah. Second disagreement for John and myself. John going with the New Orleans Saints, putting 10 on them to cover, stay within 2 points, or win, while I have 100 on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And obviously, they have to win by 3 or more for me to win that spread. So we'll see who prevails in both the actual game and and that difference there for us. But let's move on back to the AFC, where we're going to Indianapolis, where the Colts are at home, coming off that tough loss against the Falcons. They are favored by 3.5 points, hosting the Las Vegas Raiders, who just came off that big Christmas win against the Chiefs. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I am taking the Indianapolis Colts. Although the Raiders did get the win against the Chiefs, their offense was pretty anemic. It was largely due to the fact that they got those 2 defensive touchdowns. I think the Colts got kind of embarrassed last week against the Falcons, but they can smell the blood in the water. The division is up for grabs. Jacksonville has been floundering, and I think the Colts are going to show up. Jonathan Taylor is back. Last week was his first game back. I think he can be back in like full stride this week. I expect Michael Pittman to play. He did practice last week, did get ruled out. He was a limited participant as of today, but I'm expecting him to be back and playing in this game. So I'm taking the Colts for 100.
I'm going opposite, but I'm not very confident. I'm going with the Raiders for 10. I just feel like this is one of those, once again, where they're going to keep it close. They've been scrappy under Antonio Pierce, and I expect their offense to be a little bit better. Once again, it's the Chiefs' Chiefs' defense last week, which we know is very good. So that's always tough sledding and divisional opponent there. We've seen this Colts defense be had in different ways this season, and even to Atlanta and Taylor Heineke. I would expect that the Raiders have a little bit more success here on that, and also on the flip side, defensively, the Raiders have been quietly solid. They haven't been amazing, but they've been quietly solid and opportunistic. Jack Jones, he showed flashes of this kind of in New England. People forget he just got released, I believe, for some conduct issues. I forgot why he got released earlier this year. Probably not good reasons, but anyway, he's a talented person and was a high recruit coming out into college too. So he's not like some nobody, so he's showing some promise to at least be another difference maker outside of Max Crosby there. And yeah, we'll see though, because like you mentioned, they get Pittman back, another game for Jonathan Taylor to get under his legs. So will be an interesting one nonetheless, because like you mentioned, two Raiders, I think they're enjoying this kind of underdog vibe, but also like you mentioned, they still also have a little bit of hope in regards to making the playoffs. So I just feel like this will be their last stand per se in regards to making a great push against the Colts at Indianapolis. So we'll see who prevails there and for us and our differences, as John is putting 100 on the Colts to cover the 3.5 points, while I'm putting 10 on the Las Vegas Raiders who to at least keep within 3 or pull off the upset there. But let's move on over to staying in the AFC, to the AFC East, where it is the Buffalo Bills at home. They are favored by 11.5 points, hosting the New England Patriots. So really the question here is, John, I'm assuming we both feel Buffalo will win. Do we think they cover?
I'm taking Buffalo. New England, they beat them last time, so that's tough. Or they beat them, right? It wasn't just a close game. They beat them, correct?
The Patriots beat the Bills. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Let me double check.
I'm pretty sure they
Believe
beat
you're
them
right.
last time.
I'm pulling up schedule. Yeah, Patriots won 29-25.
So there's a little bit of a revenge factor here. There's the desperation factor of Buffalo needs to win out if they want to have a chance at the division title. And I think they do. That home field advantage is a big one for Buffalo considering the weather. And I think they want their opponents to have to come through Buffalo, at least through the wild card stuff. So, yeah, and the divisional round as well, potentially, because, I mean, who knows? They could maybe even get the second seed. So, yeah, I think this is a game where Buffalo rolls. That said, 11.5 feels really big. Even when Buffalo has won, I mean, last week against the Chargers, it was a close game. So I'm only going to put 10 because I don't know if Buffalo has regained my trust that much in which I'm willing to put a big bet on the largest spread and one of the largest spreads of the week. So I do think Buffalo wins. The cover part is the one that scares me.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I'm only putting 20 on the Bills to cover the 11.5, just because we haven't seen the passing game be as dominant as we were used to. But to be fair, they have a more balance, and it was just be interesting to see because the Patriots defense still really solid, despite their offense being terrible. So we'll be interesting to see how this new kind of balanced approach that Buffalo brings to the table, how it'll do against New England. But yeah, I expect, especially with Bailey Zappi at quarterback, I expect Buffalo to handle their business at the end of the day. And hopefully they cover for both of us. If not, we'll only lose. Well, John only loses 10. I would lose 20. But yeah, we both have very minimal bets on the Bills to cover against the Patriots at home. So we'll see if they do so. Let's move on over back to the NFC for a bit, starting with the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are favored by 10.5 at home, hosting the Arizona Cardinals. To be fair, though, here, a little bit of familiarity as Jonathan Gannon literally was the DC last year for the Eagles, now in Arizona, being the head coach there. So once again, here's the question: is we both feel I think that Philly will win. Question is, do we think they will cover, and how much are we putting on it?
I do think they will, but once again, the 10.5 feels a little bit big. That worries me. The reason I'm going big here, not big, I'm taking the Eagles first off, but I'm only putting 10. The reason I'm taking the Eagles is I think they need to bounce back. I think it's certainly the vibe in the locker room that what they did last week against the Giants was not acceptable and not good enough. And Arizona's defense has not really impressed me. I mean, just look at what Justin Fields was able to do against them last week. And also, Arizona's offense is just so strange. Like, they don't get receivers involved. They rely a lot on the running backs and tight ends. And I feel like the one way that you really have to beat that Eagles defense is with your receivers. And so I just feel like Arizona kind of plays into their hands. I'm hoping I'm wrong here and Arizona could pull out a win, right? But I just feel like if there's any matchup that is sort of the get-right matchup for Philly to have at this point in the year, it's this Cardinals team. And so I'm going to take the Eagles, but I'm only putting 10 because, once again, the 10.5 does feel a little bit big considering the state that Philly has been in.
Yeah, everything you said could be very well true. I'm just still concerned about the fluidity of, while the Eagles are the better team on paper, it's just a question is, can they cover, of course, and I just question their offense. We mentioned that it's still not operating at the same level as last year, creatively, just dominantly. It's a lot more work for them last year they were just blowing up big plays and such, while this year it's harder to do so, like we mentioned, because of losing offensive personnel or coaching staff. And then on the other side, I'm interested to see the Kyler factor, because he's a little bit like Lamar, where sometimes he can tire people out throughout the game with his mobility extending plays. But it being at Philly, of course, also scares me there. I just putting 20 on the Cardinals. I just feel like they'll have a little bit of familiarity with some of the personnel. Gannon on both sides of the ball. Maybe you can rise them inside, keep it close. And 10's a lot, so I mean it could easily be a blowout, like we're kind of anticipating / fearing, and then Arizona just scores a garbage time touchdown, kind of like they did last week, because that game was Chicago controlled it all the way. It's just they scored a couple points late to make it a little bit closer. So We'll see if Philly can A, take care of business, and B, cover, as John has 10 on the Eagles to cover the 10.5 points, while I have 20 on the Cardinals to keep it close. So we'll see what happens. And regardless, though, for both of us, not really any major bets there. So no harm, no foul if it doesn't go our way, or either of our ways, because we're on opposite sides. Anyhow, let's go on over to the aforementioned Chicago Bears. The Bears are at home, favored by 2.5 points, hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons still fighting for their playoff lives and divisional hopes, of course. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I am taking the Falcons. I'm putting 10 on it. I don't have a feel for either of these teams. Chicago's kind of been good recently. Atlanta was kind of bad, but then sort of figured it out. I don't know. Chicago's been really good against bad quarterbacks, especially. And we know the Falcons do not have great quarterbacks, but Bijan Robinson's been really good. He was last week. Drake London's been really good. They've kind of started to get their playmakers involved. And also Atlanta's defense is no slouch. Like, they're a solid defense. So I just don't have a feel on this one. So I'm kind of going with the team that I think has a little bit more to gain from this game, and that is the Atlanta Falcons, still in the mix for their division and a playoff spot. So I'm taking the Falcons, but I'm only putting 10.
All right, well, another disagreement for us, as I'm going with the Bears. I'm putting 20. I just feel like the Bears at Justin Fields still have a lot they want to show and prove. And like I said, I've been impressed with them recently. And obviously, let me double check stats of DJ Moore. Hopefully he's available, because that will be big for them, for that offense. As obviously he's their best playmaker. But they've gotten the run game going recently regardless. And I just, as good as Taylor Heineke, as much as he's better than obviously Desmond Ridder, in my opinion. Like I said, Bears defense has been a bright spot recently, and I think that they'll be able to match up, take away those options, and they'll probably live with, hey, Arthur, if you want to feature Jonnu Smith and Kadero Hodge, go ahead, do it. We don't think they're going to beat us. Also, too, weather, I think, will be a factor here. Chicago, familiar with that. They live in that city, of course, the Bears. While Atlanta, it could be a factor for them that goes against them here and playing to the Bears' favor. So, I'm going with the Bears for 20 to cover the 2.5 points, while John is going with the Falcons for only 10 minimum, but to pull off the upset or keep it within 2. So we'll see if the Falcons can prevail there to keep their season alive and possibly keep Arthur Smith employed, as he was also rumored to potentially be on the hot seat as well. But let's move on over to the San Francisco 49ers, coming off that tough loss against the Baltimore Ravens. They are favored by 12.5 points going to Washington. So basically, John, do you think they will cover, or do you think Washington will keep it within 12.5?
I'm taking the Niners. Washington, I mean, they were getting blown out by the Jets last week. Breece Hall destroyed them. I think McCaffrey's going to destroy them. I think Brock Purdy, after his 4 interceptions, is going to want to bounce back in a big way. I don't think that there's any hope for Washington stopping Kittle, Tebow, or Ayuk. So I think the offense is going to put up a lot of points, and I just don't see a way in which this Washington offense that has moved on to like their third string running back, Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback, just a lot of issues over there. I just don't really see any way in which the Niners don't just completely destroy Washington to try and get rid of this narrative that they've been figured out, or they panic, or because they don't want to. If this game's like close, I feel like people might kind of start to run with that stuff of like, oh, Baltimore beat you, and like you had a close game against Washington. So I think they're going to shred them. So I'm putting 100 on the Niners.
Same. I think the Niners bounce back here. Only reason I'm not putting more is, who knows, with Jacoby Brissett, maybe he has actually filled in pretty nicely for Washington. So maybe, and they do have good weapons. So yeah, maybe it could be a garbage time cover or some sort.
Yeah.
That's what I'm sure we're both not putting more on this
Yeah.
one. But I'm with you. I expect the Niners to bounce back. And Washington has a poor offensive line. Niners have a pretty good front seven, as we know. So it's just, a lot of bad recipes here for the Commanders. But who knows? We'll see if the Niners can cover. We both put 100 on the Niners to do so. So hopefully they prevail for both of us and bounce back from that tough loss against the Ravens, so we can avoid all of that nonsense that we just mentioned. But anyhow, let's go on over to the LA Rams, as they are favored by 4.5 points going to the New York Giants. Giants are starting or named Tyrod Taylor the starter over Tommy DeVito. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm going to go with the Rams. I mean, the Giants, yeah, they were competitive against Philly last week, but even then, it was, I mean, the turnovers helped the Giants. I don't think the Rams are going to turn the ball over like that. The offense has been moving and grooving. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Kyron Williams or Puka Nacua, who've been absolutely balling out. So, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think the Giants really have it in them to get this win. And for the Rams, we talked about all the tiebreakers and the playoffs and all this kind of stuff. Like, they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they lose here and somehow, some way, that Niners game at the end of the season becomes a must-win scenario. You don't want to be in that situation, considering your history with the Niners especially. So I think they handle their business here against the Giants. I'm putting 500 on them. My tied for biggest bet with the Cowboys.
All right, well, here's where I'm emptying out my treasure trove. I'm putting 1,100 on the LA Rams. Yeah, like their offense has got it all right now. You mentioned Kyron, Puka Nacua, and Cooper. It's odd to think that Cooper Kupp's an afterthought. Now, granted, I personally feel like it's probably because he's banged up. And, probably not 100%. He's been dealing with some injuries. But regardless, their offense has been amazing with Stafford and them. And quietly, their defense has been really solid too. And while I suspect the Giants' passing offense to probably be better under Tyrod Taylor, like we've mentioned before, like there's not even that many weapons for like Tyrod to really, for Tyrod to work with that really scare you. And like I said, Rams defense has been solid for the most part. So yeah, I think Rams take care of business, like you mentioned, prime opportunity to at least lock up a playoff spot potentially, and so that maybe next week. I mean, I'm not sure scenarios, but I'm looking up see if they go 9-7, they may just lock up a wild card spot, and then maybe they just play their starters for a bit next week. Who knows? You know what I mean? It gives them that flexibility. Kind of like we've been alluding to, regardless, where they don't have to show everything too, because maybe they seating wise they could get the Niners the very next week in the wild card. Then that then they'll want to not show as much. But anyway,
I mean, it puts them in a situation where if it's not a forced win and get in scenario, like they can play a little bit more carefree and maybe even spoil the Niners' chance at the 1 seed. Like, which I'm sure they would want to do. So
we'll see if they can do so and handle their business, though, at least against the Giants. But we are both heavily invested and heavily confident that they will do so, as John putting 500 on the LA Rams to cover the 4.5 points, while I'm putting 1,100, easily the biggest bet. I think biggest bet game, period. Like we both put like in total for both of us for the season. So, man, I was hoping it would be a difference, but we'll take it. I got to at least get positive. So we'll see if the LA Rams can pull through for both of us, although you may be rooting for opposite of that. Or at least you may be rooting for the Giants to keep it close, so that's I lose basically the nail in the coffin there. We'll see what happens.
I mean, either way, it doesn't really affect me a ton because I do have a little bit of a lead. But I mean, yeah, I guess it would be more beneficial if you were to lose it, because then you'd go negative on the week, and I could still go positive. So,
there you go. Yeah, gotta play the numbers. But anyhow,
I'm more worried about the freaking Dallas game, because that's a 550 point swing. So
and it's personal too. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyhow, let's go on over to Jacksonville, where the Jaguars are at home, favored by 6.5, hosting the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to try and see any sort of update as of right now on Trevor Lawrence. But as for now, while I'm doing so, who are you going with here and for how much?
I'm going to go with Carolina. I am only going to be putting 10, but Jacksonville, they don't feel trustworthy right now, and it feels scary to really pick them. I have expected a bounce back a few weeks in a row at this point, I'm pretty sure. So, and they've just kind of burned me. Like last week, I took them against Tampa Bay, thinking that they would pull it back, and I only put 10, so it wasn't like I lost a ton. But I don't know. They have not looked very good recently, and I'm worried if I don't know. I don't know how they pull themselves out of this hole that they're in currently, because literally, I'm even looking back. I've picked that. I didn't pick them against Baltimore week 15, but week 14 I took them wrong. Week 13 I took them wrong. Like, I've been picking Jacksonville quite a bit here, and I have not been right. So, of course, this will probably be the week that they actually do bounce back, but their offense has just been pretty mediocre at best and absolutely pitiful at worst. And Carolina's defense are no slouches. Like, they actually have a pretty decent defense. And even last week against, your Packers, like, their offense showed that they can move the ball effectively if given the opportunity. So we'll see. I mean, for Jacksonville's sake, I like those guys. I got ETN playing for me in a championship in a fantasy league, and I'm hoping that he can do great, but I don't know. We'll see. At the end of the day, I just don't know if I trust the Jags.
Well, and also just in general, like their defense too. Like on this 4-game loss streak, they've been led up 34 to Jake Browning and the Bengals. That was surprise. Same with the Browns, led up 31 to the Browns. 20, led up 20. I know their offense obviously is part of the issue too, but because they only scored 7 against the Ravens, but Ravens scored 23 on them there, and then Bucks scored 30 on them last week, obviously. So yeah, I'm actually right with you. I thought I'd be alone here on this island, but I too am going with Carolina to at least keep it close, because I just don't have much confidence, and also it's troubling. Trevor Lawrence, they mentioned on the broadcast, missed obviously a bunch of the previous week because I think it was in concussion protocol, and then now even if he plays this game, I'm already seeing like he's going to be very limited in his ability to throw during the week, and I wouldn't be shocked if it limits his ability to throw during the game too. And we mentioned their offensive line not great, so it's like even if they want to lean on ETN, will they be able to?
It's been so inefficient.
Yeah, so a lot of question marks. So I'm going with it. I won't be shocked if Jacksonville pulls it out in an ugly game, but for the most part, I'm going with the Panthers. I feel like they have a little bit of confidence at least. In the recent weeks they've been playing, and right now they're just pressure's off them. I don't think they know that they don't have their first round pick and such, so they just got to go out there and play ball and try to build for the future right now. So yeah, both of us putting 10 on the Panthers, rightfully so. We're still scared. They're obviously the worst team in the league. But yeah, Jacksonville also not been very good, like we mentioned the past month. And so we'll see if they can right the ship, as they desperately need to, as like we mentioned, they are barely holding on to their division title right now, as they are tied record-wise with the Texans, and Colts just hold the tiebreakers over them, I believe. So need to get that win to secure the playoff spot, and maybe they can figure it out from there. But anyhow, this next game, though, is basically a playoff game. It feels like an elimination game for either one of these teams, especially the latter, as it is the Seattle Seahawks at home, favored by 3.5 points, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I mentioned, Steelers on the outside looking in at 8-7, need some help, and also need to take care of business on their end, while Seattle, they're trying to hold on to their positioning as of right now. They are the 7th seed in the NFC, so they're trying to feel it more secure their spot. I know there's probably better phrase for that, but anyhow, John, who do you have here, and for how much?
I am going to be going with Seattle. They're at home. I think that they're in a situation where they've built some momentum over some wins. They are close. It's never pretty. I don't think this one will be as well. I think it could be an ugly game against the Steelers, but I just find it hard for me to really grasp around my mind the Steelers, the way they've been playing going into Seattle and getting the result against the Seahawks team that has been able to rally, get some wins even against good teams like Philadelphia. So I think the Seahawks are going to want to, punch their ticket into the playoffs in the wild card round. They know that they have that little bit of a gap as well, considering all the tiebreakers we talked about in our reactions episode, with all the teams falling to 7 and 8. Them getting a win here would be pretty big. So yeah, I think similar to the Rams, I believe in them. I just don't think it's going to be as pretty of a result, but I do expect Seattle to win and cover. So I'm putting 100 on the Seahawks.
All right, well, another difference for us. I'm going with the Steelers. I'm threading the needle here, though. I think I'm just really going with them because I think they will keep this game close. Also, not just them, just Seattle tends to keep their games close. And they like to kind of play with their food, per se. But similar style coaches, defensive coaches that mainly want to run the ball. I just feel like that will kind of play into this being a close spread. Now, granted, I think Seattle will win ultimately, hence why I'm threading the needle. But it just feels like another 20-17 game for like the third straight week for the Seahawks, where they're gonna maybe be behind 17-13 or 17 all, and then lead it, get that last drive, and then maybe Pittsburgh has a chance. But as we know, Pittsburgh probably not going to pull through if they need to lean on their offense to do so. But I wouldn't be shocked if somehow Pittsburgh pulls this one out and just complicates things further, because that's what Pittsburgh loves to do. And Mike Tomlin and them, they're a bunch of warriors over there. So I'm only putting 10 because I'm once against the Steelers. It's Mason Rudolph. There's still all that. So it could easily, go sour and Seattle dominates, but I'll have to see it to believe it. So John putting 100 on the Seahawks to cover the 3.5 points at home, while I'm putting only 10 on Pittsburgh to keep it within 3 and or pull off the upset against the Seahawks. So we'll see, as that is once again, it's basically kind of a playoff game itself for both those teams. So that'll be fun.
Oh yeah.
That'd be fun to look at. I'm not sure it'd be fun to watch, because I feel like there's gonna be a lot of.
If you like those gross games, yeah, where there's a lot of punts, not a lot of great offensive football, then this could be the game for you.
Yeah. For the old school folks, this is a perfect game for you. This is like I said, 20-17 that you adore. So, with poor quarterback play. Anyhow, let's move on over to a game that should have had great quarterback play when the schedule makers made it. They were probably like, man, this is gonna be great for week 17. But here we are. It's not looking, as the fireworks in this game aren't going to be popping as much, as it's the Kansas City Chiefs at home, favored by 7.5, hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, Joe Burrow, as I was alluding to in regards to the fireworks here, and we know the Kansas City offense is not what it once was. Let's just be honest there. Like, it's over. Those days seem like at least over for now. So, John, who do you have here, and for how much?
I'm going to be going with the Bengals. I mean, just the Chiefs' offensive problems, they're worrisome. The Bengals' offense, although, last week Jake Browning did throw, 3 picks. I do think that, like, they're in general pretty decent ever since Browning's taken over. They've had some big scoring performances. I don't necessarily think they're going to be putting up, 30-something points like they did against Jacksonville, but I wouldn't be shocked if they could get into, like, the 17-21 point range and at least keep it close. The 7.5 for Kansas City, it's just unfortunate where, like, in the past that felt like a gimme. This feels, I don't know, it feels a little tough to expect them to win by more than a touchdown. So I'm taking Cincinnati. I'm only putting 10 because I do think that the Chiefs defense is really good. And if the Chiefs can just not turn the ball over, I could see them doing it. But I don't know. Their offense is just really one-dimensional, especially if Pacheco doesn't play. So, yeah, I'm taking the Bengals for 10.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, to add on what you said, it's just too much points right now. Like, I never thought we'd be saying this in a Patrick Mahomes era, but once again, here we are. I just too many points for the Bengals. I think they keep it close, especially knowing Kansas City and their tendencies. And heck, the Bengals are probably like, man, like we were able to slow these guys down when they were better before the past few years. Now they're, arguably at their lowest. So I feel like that'll help for them. On the flip side, though, yeah, I think the Bengals, I expect them to kind of bounce back from that poor performance. And I won't be shocked if they pull off the upset somehow. But regardless, yeah, 7.5, give me those points. I'm only putting 20 because, yeah, I mean, who knows with this game? Like I said, Jake Browning could throw key pick 6 or something to push the spread a certain way. But, yeah, we're both going Bengals. John going 10. I'm going 20 on the Bengals, as we are hoping that they keep it within 7 and or pull off the upset against the Chiefs at Arrowhead. So we'll see that results. Let's move on to the next game. Another AFC matchup here. This one not as explosive or fun, even with the fact as it is the Denver Broncos at home, favored by 3.5. Looking like it's going to be Jared Stidham at quarterback, hosting the LA Chargers, and Easton Stick at quarterback for the Chargers there. So who do you have here, John, and for how much?
I'm taking the Chargers. I'm only putting 10. I just think both these teams are kind of gross. The Chargers were like competitive against the Bills last week. Denver, I mean, they're benching Russ. I don't know, man. I don't know. So I'm taking the Chargers for 10 just because maybe they lose by field goal. I still get it there. So we'll see. This is just a game where I'm kind of going for the pick as opposed to the money.
Yeah, I'm also putting 10. I mean, anyone that's doing accounting knows I have like no money left, so 10's pretty much gonna be all the way out here. But yeah, I'm going with Denver. Just I have they're the home team. It is a thing going to Mile High for the first time for Easton Stick and company. I know the rest of the Chargers probably have experience, but Easton Stick being the starting quarterback and Denver's defense, like we mentioned before, it can't be opportunistic. And we really, I know it's like 2 weeks ago, but I'm not saying it's going to happen like, with the 63 points, but we saw this LA Charger offense just be absolutely inept, give up turnovers. I won't be shocked. They have a couple here that help out Jared Stidham. And also, I think what helps is Stidham at least has some experience, at least more than Easton Stick, filled in for the Raiders last season, did solid at times. And I've been interested to see, maybe Sean Payton feels more comfortable with him executing some of the offense too. He doesn't have to maybe manage him as much in regards to what he can do. I don't know. Be interesting to see. But regardless, kind of a meaningless game. I mean, maybe not for Denver. They're still technically fighting for a playoff spot, but they're on the outside looking in. So we'll see what happens. Another difference for John and I. It's only 10 for either of us. John going with the Chargers to keep it within 3 or less. I'm putting 10 on Denver to cover, so they have to win by 4 or more there. So we'll see if they can handle their business at Mile High. But last, and certainly not least, it is the Sunday night game. Let me double check. There is no Monday night game. I'm guessing because they're prepping for Week 18. Want everyone to be on a even rest, I guess, per se. Let me double check. Yeah, no Monday night games. This is a Sunday night game. It is my Green Bay Packers go up against the Vikings. The Vikings are at home. They are favored by 1.5 against the Packers. The Packers, the underdog. Who you going with here, John, and for how much?
I'm going to be taking your Green Bay Packers. I think that Nick Mullins and that Minnesota offense has just been kind of questionable to me. And Green Bay, this is a game that means a lot for both. Obviously, because they're sitting at 7-8, trying to make a run at the wild card. But I just feel like Green Bay, the one issue I really have is their defense. But considering the state of the Vikings offense, I don't know if Nick Mullins is good enough to get Justin Jefferson the ball without TJ Hawkinson and maybe Jordan Addison. I don't know the status on Addison, actually. But I know that he did go out early last week. I know TJ Hawkinson's done. I don't know if it's torn, but ACL and MCL injuries.
So he's technically questionable, at least for ESPN. Apparently, Kevin O'Connell said he's day to day. He's not willing to rule him out.
Gotcha. Jordan Addison?
Yes. Yeah, obviously TJ, RIP. Hopefully he gets back.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't know if he's going to play. And so I think it's kind of just Justin Jefferson and then like KJ Osborne. And I feel like that makes him a little bit one-dimensional. And although I do expect them to maybe, be able to put up some numbers, I just don't know if it's going to be enough. And same with Ty Chandler. Like, it feels like Minnesota is just really down bad right now due to injuries. And I don't know if they can fully expose Green Bay like some other teams maybe have. So I'm going to take the Packers, but I'm only putting 10 because that game against Carolina did not instill a ton of confidence in me.
Yeah, it doesn't for me at all. And that's actually why I'm going with the Vikings. Just no Jair. Also, I just feel like it's going to be a little bit of a field day for Justin Jefferson. And we've seen, too, with Jordan Love and the Packers offense, inconsistencies, and he's going to be tested against a Brian Flores defense that is going to stress out the offensive line protection rules. He loves to crowd the line of scrimmage and throw creative, exotic blitzes. I'm not sure the status of Christian Watson. If he were available, it would make me feel a little more confident because he's one of the few people that I can get open in man-to-man or one-on-one situations. But who knows his status? So, I just feel like the Vikings have a little more pride to play for right now, and it being at home. Packers, I feel like the Packers offense has been noticeably worse at home too. So, we'll see though, because Aaron Jones had a really good week last week, so maybe a balance will help. But it's tough. But I'm going with the Vikings. Basically, this is also an elimination game. Both these teams 7-8, so basically whoever wins still has hope in the playoff race, while whoever loses is pretty much out. So kudos to NBC there for that scheduling. They got a solid idea of a game, but who knows how it will actually be in actuality. But hopefully, the curse the jinx lives on for me, and maybe my Packers will prevail, and it'll be interesting going into last week. But yeah, those are our week 17 picks. Once again, we have 8 differences. It'd be very funny if we split them down the middle. Obviously, our biggest bets, John putting 500 on the Rams and Cowboys. Cowboys need to cover by 7 or more against Detroit. Rams need to cover by 5 or more against the Giants. I'm also with John in regards to my big 1100 on the on the LA Rams to cover against the Giants. So we'll see. We'll see if they pull through for us, and if obviously, like I mentioned, I feel like money wise I'm out of it. Who knows? We'll see. But record wise, at least, is interesting, as I'm only 2 games behind John once again. So we'll see. How things will look going into week 18 for us record wise, and also obviously for the league, because like we mentioned, feels like a lot of like playoff type games already happening right now for some teams where you got to win or go home basically. So
yeah,
we will see what happens. Once again, those games Thursday, Saturday, 1 game Thursday, 1 game Saturday, the rest on Sunday. So we have an action-packed New Year's Eve for everyone. So we'll see you all on the flip side. If you are celebrating New Year's Eve / New Year's, be safe out there and such, especially with fireworks. We don't want a JPP situation happening to anybody.
Yeah.
Be cautious. Be careful, people. But otherwise, we'll see you all in 2024. Ha 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 ha. And we'll be obviously back then with our Week 18 picks Week 18 reactions. Week 17 reactions. Jeez, I'm mixing up already. And Week 18 picks next week.